If you base it on the comments that we just heard from both, and I assume you heard them, it seems that the two sides are positioned for something more than trade. It looks like we'll be here for the longer term.
It certainly looks like the two sides are positioning themselves ahead of the G20 summit, where Trump and Xi Jinping will be meeting, or at least they're expected to meet. It's clear that the U.S. is signaling a very hardline stance, and Vice President Mike Pence seems to be channeling the hawks in the Trump administration who don't want to give an inch to China. On the other side, China is clearly concerned about being corralled into a pen whereby the U.S. ends up creating an alliance with other trading partners who are all concerned about trading practices of China. So China seems to be pushing back very aggressively against any notion that unfair trading practices are in fact its fault rather than those of the U.S., which is the narrative that has been trying to spin that it is in fact the adult in the room while the U.S. has been trying to impose unfair trading practices.
So who actually is in the stronger position here?
At one level, it seems like the U.S. is in a stronger position because the Chinese economy is slowing down. The currency has been weakening for a while, although in the last few days it has perked up a little bit. But the reality is that the Chinese are not willing to be in a position where their core economic policies, especially the Made in China 2025 plan, are put aside because of U.S. pressure. The key thing is they cannot be seen to be giving in to U.S. pressure in terms of changing the structure of the economy, which is what they hope to do, or at least plan to do. Now, the reality is that what the U.S. is demanding is not just a negotiation, but essentially an unconditional surrender, which the Chinese are not willing to give in to. So I think what we are really after here is a long-term economic conflict between the two countries. And the trade conflict, I think, is just simmering over a little bit, but it's really a small part of the broader picture between the two countries.
The narrative in Beijing in terms of some of the newspaper editorials, which are largely controlled by the state, is that the United States wants to take China down. How much of an element of truth is there in that? And if that is the case, there's no way they're going to make a deal, is there?
The real concern among the hawks in the Trump administration is that China's rise does mean a negative outcome for the U.S. And once you see the economic conflict in that zero-sum game, it's going to be very difficult to think about a path where the two biggest economies in the world can come to an agreement. If it was more narrowly defined in the context of trade, certainly one can argue that both sides could benefit. But there are certainly those in the Trump administration who see trade as a small part of the big picture that China, through its theft of intellectual property and through its economic and trading practices, is taking unfair advantage of the U.S. and that the U.S. has been hurt in terms of its own economic development because of China. So long as that narrative continues to drive Washington's policies towards Beijing, it's hard to see how the two sides can come to an agreement of some sort. Although one might end up seeing some easing of trade tensions because that's not good for either side. But I think the deeper tensions have come to the fore and are likely to be able to be stuffed back into the bottle anytime soon.